Welcome to Email After Hours by Senderscore, powered by Validity.
We're your hosts. My name is Guy Hansen.
And I'm Danielle Gallant, and this is Email After Hours. Today, we are talking about nonprofit email programs, which come with a set of very unique challenges. They're not pushing products like standard retail email programs. Really, they are tugging at heartstrings and asking people to contribute to a cause. And that requires marketers to create emails that have heart, a worthy story, and maybe a little bit of magic too.
We're thrilled to sit down today with Kim Abuelhaj, who lives and breathes this work as the Senior Director of Annual Giving and Membership at GLAD. That's GLAAD. Kim, you want to just give us the full spit out of that?
Yeah, so GLAAD is one of the world's largest LGBTQ media advocacy organizations, and our work really focuses on advocating and fighting for authentic representation of LGBTQ people and issues in all types of media, ranging from film, TV shows, to advertising, to gaming, to podcasts. So we really try to put ourselves everywhere and make sure that everyday people are learning about who we are authentically and working to change hearts and minds.
That's awesome. Thanks. So I think in the context of today, you clearly understand what makes your subscribers tick, what keeps nonprofit programs alive in tough times, how email in the NFP world has evolved into a seriously important channel. So welcome to the show, Kim. It's really great to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
And as always, we kick off with a little bit of an icebreaker question before we get into the nitty gritty. And as we said, unlike other versions of email marketing, it is really essential, actually, that a program like yours generates responses from the community. So, what was the most unexpected or unforgettable donor response that you've ever come across?
We definitely do get a lot of random responses sometimes. And one that really sticks out to me is this person who claimed to know the monkey handler for Michael Jackson and wanted to give us one of his gloves to auction off. And it was very random. We could not authenticate it, but it's funny because in the nonprofit space, you get a lot of responses like that of people trying to donate or give random things and things that might not necessarily work with your mission or cause. So that was a fun one.
How do you respond to that?
Oh my gosh, I don't even remember. I think it was a thank you, we will look into it, and it fizzled out after that.
So the answer, I guess, is politely. Well, I mean, we've already said a couple times here that there are, there are distinct nuances for NFP email marketing compared to traditional like B2C marketing. And so, in your opinion, tell us what makes your space different.
I think you kind of touched on it, in the intro. And what really makes the nonprofit space different is that we're not selling a product, we're selling our mission. And we are trying to corral support around that mission so that we can do good in the world. And selling an idea is not as easy as selling a thing that people receive in exchange for their money. And so that's something I think that really makes marketing in the nonprofit space stand out or is really different from the business world.
Definitely. How does that shape the way that you approach your email campaigns, like right from the strategy phase?
We really have to tread the line between good storytelling, but also strategies that work to get those transactions in. And so it's really a balancing act between figuring out, do your supporters like more of that long form content? Do they like more of that short form content? How are you explaining the work that you do with such limited space and then also convincing someone to donate at the same time? And so that's something that when we develop our strategy, we really go into thinking because every nonprofit's different. And at GLAD, we were recently finding that people like our long stories in terms of engagement, but they don't necessarily give to them the way that they would give to more of those short form transactional emails. And so we take that information, we look at that data, analyze it, and then figure out, how can we improve our next campaign and incorporate these findings in a way so that we're sending out material that resonates with our supporters.
That's really interesting because I think, probably from an email marketing view, every sector has its pain points, but I think we know that nonprofits have some that most marketers never come across. And, when it comes to sort of digging into some of those invisible pressures, I guess, or realities of NFP email that, other marketers don't typically see. I think, you talked about the importance of storytelling a moment ago. And I guess that in your world, the ability to craft good and compelling stories to your subscribers is critical, especially as you're sort of balancing up, trying to trigger the emotions, but without coming across as too cringeworthy at the same time. It's a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it's also we do get a lot of people who want to share their stories with us. And so that's also a balancing act of how can we help them tell their story in a way that is authentic to them, but then will resonate with the our general audience as well. And so um it's funny to see, some stories really resonate with folks, some seem not to. And we could get into the technical side of things, like, was it just the day that we sent the email? Were there some deliverability things at play? But it's really a balancing act of trying to figure out, what's the right story to get in front of people and what's gonna tug at their heartstrings to get them to wanna support your mission.
Totally. That's so interesting. And I mean, I guess you could say that all businesses are better and perform more effectively and efficiently in a good economy. But I think that the nonprofit sector is really even more heavily dependent on what's happening economically. So, how do you keep your program resilient during economic volatility?
It's really tough, and right now is a really tough time because in the United States, our economy is all over the place, and a lot of nonprofits across the industry are seeing low dollar donors, so donors who give, smaller amounts, they are not giving as much as they have in the past, and, that's because they don't know what the future holds, and so their likelihood of donating does decrease, and so in the moment, it's really tough, to combat, the economic vitality, but it's really important for nonprofits to focus on how can they prepare their program for that moment, and that's really what's going to get that really is what gets nonprofits through times like this, is if before, the recession hits or whatever, how are we stewarding our donors and cultivating a strong and loyal relationship with them so that they're going to stand by us through tough times and good times. And so, a good strategy, a nonprofit strategy, will really focus on that and understand that the future of your program really depends on how you're cultivating those relationships today and not just responding to crisis in the moment, but building that long-term relationship so that folks are going to think of you when they're thinking of themselves. I'm like, how are we going to get through this moment? That's like one way. And with that, I will say, monthly sustaining revenue is a great way for nonprofits to get through times like this because we find that nonprofits who have stronger and bigger monthly giving programs or recurring programs tend to get through these moments of crisis a little bit easier because that sustaining revenue is coming in. And so there's ways to kind of prepare your file for a moment like this so that when it happens, you're not hit as hard as some other folks who might not have those resources in place.
That's so interesting. And on a related topic, I mean, we're recording this episode roughly halfway between Black Friday and Christmas. And I think, most marketers know that this is a period of email chaos and high expectations. So What's your core strategy when, a typical consumer's mailbox is just being flooded with retail campaigns? What works for you? Do you join in, or is it a period where you back off a little bit?
There's a few different strategies that I really focus on during this time of year. Definitely cannot back off because right now people are really in the holiday spirit. They're a little bit more generous than they normally would be. So you definitely want your message to be out there. So there's a number of techniques that we try to implement on our end so to cut through the noise. I think the easiest and the first that everyone's thinking of is having catchy subject lines and from lines so that they really stand out in your inbox. Having good, compelling creative, um, being strategic with what time you're sending things out, or just being kind of aware of your email engagement metrics, thinking through, do we need to send an email to non-openers or something like that so that we're able to get in front of folks. And then also really just looking at the technical side of things as well. And so monitoring email deliverability, monitoring your sender score, monitoring your inbox placement. If that's looking a little soft, how are we pivoting to troubleshoot for that? Because all of those things compounded together will really impact how whether or not folks are going to be opening and responding to your emails. And so it's funny because we kind of noticed that our email metrics for Giving Tuesday were a little bit softer than last year. And so we're looking into how we can suppress some of those inactive folks that might be bringing down those scores right now. And so that's something that we're looking to implement today and test it out to see if we're ready for the end of year fundraising to see if that helps bring our KPIs up a bit.
It's music to our ears, Kim, honestly.
So actually plenty of levers that you can pull in terms of timing,
Oh,
in
yeah.
terms of creative, in terms of segmentation
Yeah.
tactics. But, one thing that Danielle and I were discussing when we were preparing for today's conversation is that we're probably both a little bit guilty of thinking that, when you talk about NFP email programs, the main goal is just to drive revenue and how do you maximize that. But, you're talking about other metrics that you monitor, and are there any that you monitor that you feel are specifically important to the kind of program that you're running?
Response rate, donations, always the top line metric we're looking at. But we do like to look at, our click-through rates. We want to make sure that our supporters are not only opening our emails, well, and also, open rates are kind of, they're not the best metric for measurement right now. So really looking at click rates to see are folks engaging. If not, then what's going on there? Or if our click rates are high, but our response rate is low, does that tell us our completion rate on our form is not strong? And so what do we need to tweak on our form, so that we're leveraging that strong click rate? Um, and so that's something that I really look at. I mentioned deliverability. That's like one of my my top things. I've noticed that when you have an engaged file, you'll just raise more money because your inbox placement's better. And when it's better, more people see your message. And so that's something that I really look at as well. And then, some folks look at unsubscribes. I don't look at it that closely. I do monitor it to just make sure there's no sharp jumps. But folks are going to unsubscribe. And if they don't want your email, you kind of want them to so that they're not marking you as spam or not opening emails, and bringing down that score. And so, those are really kind of the top things that I look at when I'm in the moment, reviewing email performance and seeing, are we on track or do we need to make any tweaks?
That is all super spot on. I feel like being like, "Did you hear that, people? Did everybody hear that about deliverability and what to monitor?" Love that. Exactly, love that. I wanna kind of pivot a little bit just to talk about donor psychology, I guess. Like, after people have spent, thousands of dollars on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you mentioned Giving Tuesday, right? It doesn't seem like a huge ask at these times of year when people are already buying or spending money, but they would donate as well. But Are have you found that there are some times on the calendar year where people are more likely to donate than others? Does that align with the way people buy and shop, or is there something maybe unexpected about that?
That's such an interesting question. And I can tell you, the trends that we see, in the nonprofit world, and you let me know if that overlaps with, trends that you see. But, so the end of the year, December, at least for the US, that's really the biggest time of year for a lot of organizations where they see the majority of their revenue come in. Second to that would be early in the new year. And that, I say that as someone who has worked with nonprofits who do a lot of membership campaigning. And so that's basically basically trying to motivate your supporters to become a member, which is just a special term for being like a donor. And oftentimes they get a member card or something like that. And those campaigns usually take off early in the year. And so a lot of um, nonprofit donors kind of look out for those and early in the year decide these are the organizations I'm going to be a member of. And so we do tend to see a bit of a spike, shortly after December for those types of campaigns. And then I would say typically nonprofits, like in the fall, there will be like another spike in giving. Between like spring and summer, those are usually the softest months for giving. We don't see as much revenue come in. GLAD is a little bit of is a little unique in that way because we are an LGBTQ organization. We do see a spike in June for Pride Month. But that's kind of the trends that I've noticed in the nonprofit sector in terms of times of year where people tend to be the most generous.
I think a lot of that does kind of overlay with what we see, just in terms of I'm thinking of our state of email webinar series where we'll look at global, really volume trends. And the one thing that stands out to me as kind of unique is that January period, where when we are looking at email volumes and we can see based on that where marketers are like going, 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 we see that drop right at the beginning of the year, picking up again kind of toward February when things like Valentine's Day are happening. So that's just super interesting to me.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I'd also like to dig into what you were saying a moment ago, Kim, about the idea of a sort of NFP donor profile, and particularly in terms of acquisition. We were wondering, whether a sender in your sector finds acquisition easier or harder, because you might argue that it could be easier because if people know about your organization and then they're coming to your website to learn more and they're already sort of predisposed to help. Is that the case? And how do you welcome new donors on board in a way that sort of maximizes their donor potential?
It's so fascinating because, GLAD has such strong brand awareness that it's exciting to me to see the number of people who just donate to us because they see us somewhere and come to our website and give. And that's something really unique to us because organizations who don't have that brand awareness won't necessarily see that type of organic acquisition. So that is something, that does benefit us. On the flip side of that, acquisition's very expensive and nonprofits generally don't have the resources for that. And so it can be challenging in that way because it's trying to figure out how do you balance investing enough so that you're getting strong quality leads, like spending too much where your leadership might be questioning the ROI of your acquisition or like the long-term value of it. And so it's really like a balancing act of am I investing enough? And am I investing in quality leads? Um, and how does that kind of complement, our brand and how can we leverage that? And so we strive to have a really strong welcome series. We're in the process of updating that right now. And I think that's like, in terms of online acquisition, the best first thing that you can have for a newly acquired donor is having a thoughtful series that really takes them through the journey of who your organization is, the type of supporters they're joining, the type of work that they're making possible, and then trying to get them to make another donation, because we find, at least in the nonprofit sector, the moment someone makes that second gift, their retention rate increases, like, exponentially, and so that really makes a difference in whether or not, we can retain that lead for the long term.
What you're talking about there, the acquisition quality really and welcoming, creating a nice environment and that story for subscribers right out of the gate is really one of the things that in my experience just as a consultant can kind of make or break deliverability for a nonprofit sender. And so I think a lot of people in the industry would probably say deliverability for NFTs is harder, than it can be for standard retail, but not always the case. I think it's really about the approach, and the dedication to monitoring that and improving the actual flow for your subscribers. But when and if you've experienced volatility in your deliverability or inbox placement, what has influenced that?
Be specific to a domain, that can be impacting deliverability. And it can also really be a result of just not keeping a clean file and not removing those spam traps. And then you're emailing them, emailing them, emailing them. The hygiene of your list is not great. And then that kind of starts to bring down your deliverability, and then fixing it is just a lot of work and a whole mess. And it takes a while to kind of turn it around. And so, um, I found that prevention for me has been the best thing, and, I really make an effort to validate our file quarterly. I'm pretty proud we usually have a very high validation rate. It's, like, in the 90s because we do it so regularly. But for me, that has really been, like, making sure that our email file has good emails in it and that we're not just sending to whatever, and cleaning out the spam traps, the bad emails, all of that.
Great best practices there. I think you can see myself and Danielle nodding approvingly. My next question for you, Kim, is gonna give away my age. Don't laugh, Danielle. But, even before I came into email marketing, I was in the world of digital printing, and, as our customers started using both channels, email and print, it made a lot of sense to me that they naturally complemented each other, but somehow, as a tactic, it's never taken off in quite the way I thought it was going to. But, from talking to you, it sounds like this is a strategy that works really well for your organization. So tell us, what is it about, operating direct mail and email together that works so well in combination for you?
It's so funny because I get asked all the time from leadership, is direct mail dead? Do we still need to do it? It's becoming so expensive. Do people even respond? And the answer is is always yes. It's not dead, at least not in the nonprofit space. It is expensive, so we do have to be strategic with who we are mailing. But the thing that makes direct mail really complement the digital space is that you're opening up another channel for people to get in touch with your organization, um, that's not even being a part of all of the digital noise that people are experiencing today. Like right now, our email boxes are inundated with so many emails from, politician cycles. You have a ton of nonprofits always asking for things. There's a lot of businesses that are trying to cultivate, their customer base, and so there's just a lot of fighting, going on, and so that's an email. Social media advertising has gotten a little bit trickier these days. The introduction of AI is having impacts on SEO, and so it's kind of like there's all of these, things that you're up against, and so how can you continue to break through that noise and get your message out there? And direct mail is a really great way to do that, um, if you have the audience for it. And fortunately for Glad, we do have that audience. The typical nonprofit donor age, um, on average is like 65, 70 or higher, and so that audience, really resonates with mail still, um, but also because direct mail is more expensive and not as many people are doing it, it is a way to really get in front of folks, and for them to see you. And so, like, I get excited when I get mail now because I get so little of it. Um, so, to know that, like, I get little mail, but if I'm sending mail out, someone might get it. And so that multi-channel strategy is really important because I have found, statistically, the more times that a person sees your mission in different channels or different avenues, their trust in your organization increases, their knowledge of your organization increases, and their likelihood of giving increases.
And is that reflected in your metrics as well? Do you see differences in things like donor loyalty or long-term value when you're sort of comparing people that engage across both channels versus digital only?
We do. We do see, people who give in the mail and online tend to be more loyal donors, they tend to be more long-term donors, and they tend to give higher donations, and I think that's because of the avenue that they're donating in. A lot of times, folks who give in the mail, they're writing a check still, and when you're writing a check, that's more permanent, and so you're more thoughtful about what you're giving. Whereas online, I use Apple Pay for everything. So I'm like, Apple Pay, Apple Pay, Apple Pay. I can donate $5 here, $5 there. It's the different mentality. And so um that we have found that people who use like those digital wallets tend to not be as long-term loyal supporters as someone who's using their credit card or a bank deposit. So it's just interesting how the psychology behind that can impact, I don't know if it impacts their giving, but it can kinda tell you what type of donor they will be.
That is so cool. I love this whole conversation. I know we're gonna start winding down now, but I love when we get into a very specific program type and when, our guest, like, you've just given us so much specificity and, like, really clear information on this. I think it'll be so helpful for our listeners who maybe even if they're not nonprofit, hey, take away a whole bunch of stuff on this deliverability, on storytelling, on welcoming. I love that, and I know we're starting to wrap up here, but I do wanna ask kind of outside of nonprofit, looking at your own mailbox in your inbox from retail and travel and all of the other things, all of the other brands and industries that are sending you email, do you adopt any tactics from them for your own email program?
I really try to take a look at any trends I'm noticing in the emails I'm receiving in my inbox because either it means it's a new idea that folks are testing, so maybe we wanna test it too, or it's something that's, like, working, and so maybe we should try it out too. And so, um, I you know, I think the easiest thing to really pay attention to are subject lines. I really try to pay attention to what type of subject lines folks are using, to kind of increase open rates there. But also just thinking visually, a lot of businesses have really interesting newsletter layouts and, you know, those are really cool to try to implement for the nonprofit space because sometimes, it can be hard to tell your story. A newsletter is a great way to do that and you have the real estate for it. But how do you make it engaging so that folks are going to want to click on everything and, they're not just going to open it, get overwhelmed and close the email. And so I really try to look out for things like that and see how can we implement that on our end.
Love it. So we're going to stay with subject lines for a second because we started with a quick fire question for you, and we're going to close with one as well. And when we were preparing for this recording, we asked you if you'd ever run a campaign that was a little bit out there but had delivered unexpectedly brilliant results. And you told us about a truly epic subject line that you deployed one time. Do you want to tell our listeners that story?
Yeah, so it was for Giving Tuesday. It was a couple years ago. And in the nonprofit world, if you want to have a fighting chance on Giving Tuesday, you need to have a match. Every nonprofit has one, and if you don't have one, it's kind of like a death sentence. And that year, we did not have a match. And so we were like, how are we going to cut through the noise and get people to want to open our emails and care about us today when we're not offering them that one-to-one match? And so um, we thought, why not just be frank and ask people, give an F this Giving Tuesday, uh, and support, LGBTQ media advocacy, so that we can achieve 100% acceptance. And that still to this day has been one of our best performing Giving Tuesday campaigns. Even without a match, it was so successful, you would have thought we had one. And I think it was just that frankness and that honesty and that message that really got people thinking, huh, maybe I should give an F this Giving Tuesday and support GLAAD. And so that was one of our best
That's awesome.
campaigns.
Danielle, I'm thinking that Matt, that does all our LinkedIn promos, I think he's just got his soundbite for this episode.
I love that story so much. I think it's so
It
true,
is.
though. Kim, it's like frank, honest, look at this.
Yeah.
Face it. I
Absolutely.
love it. But Kim, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing like incredibly valuable insights. For our listeners that are interested in connecting with you or learning more about your work or GLAAD, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I guess I am on LinkedIn. So you can find me there, and I'm happy to get in touch with anyone or answer any questions that way.
I love that. And for all of our listeners, be sure to tune in next time. Hit subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes or any awesome content like this. And don't forget to visit senderscore.org for more resources to help you become a stronger sender.
That's right. And, sort of in closing, just to make the point that Danielle and I, we love our guests that join us on Email After Hours. We're always looking out for new guests as well to feature on future episodes. So if you're listening and you'd like to join us on an upcoming episode, drop a comment, ping us on LinkedIn, send us an email at emailafterhours@validity.com, and we would absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks for listening today, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. Bye for now. Be sure to tune in next time and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And don't forget to visit senderscore.com for loads more great resources to help you become a stronger sender.
To all you sleepless senders out there, thank you for joining us after hours and see you next time.